I'm a teacher at an inpatient unit in Wales.
Could you say a bit about how you became interested in NVR, Anna?
Yeah. Well, it started really with one patient that we had quite a while ago. We were struggling with her behaviour, tried all kinds of different approaches and were stuck as in what to do. So we asked for support from various areas, and our family therapist came up with NVR, which suited us absolutely beautifully. So that was the first time we heard about it, but it just all made sense.
Can you say a bit about how you're using it at the moment?
Okay, so far we've only been trained within the education unit plus a few extra people, so we can't implement it fully properly, but the way we are doing this at the moment, especially I'm doing this at the moment, is I'm using some of the ideas from the philosophy behind it to change my own way of thinking about behaviour, and go again away from the one-upmanship, as in I'm the boss and you need to do as you're told, to I find this behaviour unacceptable and I will not tolerate it, and I can control my own response to it, but I can't control you, young person, as in how you behave. So I think on the whole, the three of us in the unit here, we are all much more relaxed about inappropriate behaviour. I think if we find it easier to take a step back, and respond calmly rather than starting to argue with them and they draw you in. We're much more like stepping away from that and rethinking it. And I think also the way we are using it is there's a lot more talk about how we deal with certain behaviours and how we can support each other.
So talk between the different teaching staff?
Yes. So before, if someone was misbehaving, I would have felt that was my responsibility and my failure. Whereas now it's much more like if I need help from my line manager, another teacher here, I wouldn't see that as failure. I wouldn't see that as desperation anymore, as I would in the past. And now I see it as support. So little steps that we are implementing, as I said, kind of the ideas behind the whole idea, the whole NVR philosophy. Yeah.
How did you go about incorporating NVR into the day-to-day running of the school?
Okay, so because we're part of a PRU, we have already existing behaviour policies. So the first thing was to work out how the two would blend, and actually it's blended really nicely. We have to stay in line with the existing policy, but slide our new thoughts and ways of dealing with things into that policy. But it's working really well. I think we're all going more along the lines of helping the young person rather than controlling the young person. So and apart from that, we haven't done very much in implementing the NVR other than responses, individual responses to young people. For instance, we had a young lad up here. He is not in education anymore. He was behaving in a way that we didn't find acceptable. So we were able to tell him, this is not acceptable. We can't have this behaviour in class. So as a teacher, I would tell him that, and then my line manager would tell him the same thing. So we've started to implement it in that kind of way. It's leading towards the bookmark, which we will be putting in place once we're a step further.
And that's
on.
part of the PEN approach that you read about.
Yes, so that is taking NVR into schools on the continent mainly, and in Israel they call it New Authority. It's a way of using it in school, as NVR was used for parents mainly, but it can be easily adapted for school use. And one of the things that they use is a bookmark, which is a little bit less formal than an announcement, but it's still telling the young person that I am not going to engage in a discussion with you about this. This is unacceptable. We do not allow that here. This might not be the best time to discuss it, but we're going to come back to it and have a chat about it.
What have you noticed about the positive impact, if any, that NVR is having on the school?
The main one, I can't say in terms of the behaviour of the young people, because they're not here long enough for me to establish that. But it's been very good for us as an education staff. I think we realise a lot more that we are on the same line. We always were, but I think now we see it written down and go, yes, that's what we have been doing, and so we're bonding in that way. We understand each other that yes, this is what we're doing, and we agree that that's what we're doing. So support from each other.
That sounds a bit like a sharing of values, is that?
Yes, I think so. It's things that you otherwise wouldn't have discussed. Like as I said, as a teacher, I feel like I'm responsible for what goes on in the classroom, and I wouldn't talk about it because that would admit that I'm not doing my job properly. Whereas now that is changed. Yes, we can talk about it, and it's fine, and we support each other. The other really positive thing that we've noticed is our relationship with nursing assistants. When we were introduced to NVR, it was with a few nursing assistants at a time. They were trained alongside us, and we decided to have informal coffee afternoons, which was really nice. So once a week we had 3 or 4 nursing assistants up. We had coffee and tea and cake, and we had a chat about things to try and understand where the other person was coming from and understand their roles. And also in those sessions we've put together an induction booklet which can be given to new NAs, so when they come up to the school they understand the way we work and their role within that. So we're now in the process of having that being put into place. We've written the booklet and it's ready to roll. So it's.
Have there been what have been the difficulties, if any?
I think, from my own perspective, old habits die hard. Yeah. You need to remind yourself. I needed to remind myself a lot of the time that no, I can't control them. It's my behaviour that I can control, and I need to remind myself and not get sucked in arguments and so on, and that's escalation. So it's the constant de-escalating that, you know, I needed to remember that. Also, one issue is that we're not all trained yet, so when the education staff is, I would love to see it put in place properly.
Do you mean throughout the unit?
Throughout the whole of the unit,
yeah.
So we can do the announcements and the sit-ins and so on, but we're not at that stage yet, so it makes it a bit difficult to do NVR without having that the whole support system. Basically that's what it is the whole of the support system in place. Having it
sort of a joint set of values, language, understanding.
Yes.
Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. What will you need to develop NVR through the school?
We will need support from our trainer. We will need more training. I think we need a regular reminder as well of what the vision is, and time and opportunity and patience.
Just one more question, Anna. What would your advice be to anyone attempting to incorporate NVR practice into their role as an educator?
Interesting. I would say the first thing you need is an NVR specialist, because otherwise you end up reading a whole lot of books by yourself, and it's quite overwhelming. Once you've got that, the next important thing is a support network. You won't be able to do this on your own. The whole principle behind this is that people support each other. So you need to have at least a small group of people that are keen to implement this. Apart from that, I think determination.
Persistence.
Yeah, and you need to believe in it. And I think that's, if you want to do it, it's great. Go ahead and just go for it.
Thank you, Anna.
You're welcome.